Namaste, good morning, Sarvesham Prabhat. I would like to very warmly welcome all our friends, well-wishers, seekers of knowledge, lovers of Sanskritam to a divine morning of yet another Jnananidhi event. We call it the Yesterday is Equal to Tomorrow series. This is our monthly chapter where we explore and enjoy going deeper into the texts, facts, and teachings of a very vast storehouse of knowledge from our ancient Indian heritage and culture. What a wonderful country we belong to, and we're so very fortunate to have access to such a treasure. On a very personal note, my life changed dramatically 1.5 years back. We found a truly wonderful teacher to teach us bhajans, Guru Kalavati Ashok. With her bhajans, I with a group of my friends have embarked on a very divine journey. 6 months later, we are again very fortunate to meet another wonderful teacher for Sanskritam, who not only teaches us the spoken and written language of Sanskritam, but also imparts us knowledge from all the ancient scriptures. Pravina Guru. My third Guru, Sushi Natarajan, who taught us the very challenging game of bridge, is also among us today. My pranam and heartfelt gratitude to all my three wonderful Gurus. I would like to start off the morning like that. To everyone else, it's time to just sit back, enjoy the program, and let's get into this very, very divine morning. Just to use a few Sanskritam words. Abhishta Janaha Swagatam. Kripaya Upavishantu. Ramanubhavam Pashyantu. So, welcome everyone again, and let's get into the whole session now. We will start with the bhajan rendered by Kalash.
अयोध्यवासी राम 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 दशरथ नंदन राम अयोध्यवासी राम 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 दशरथ नंदन राम पतित पावन जानकी जीवन सीता मोहन राम पतित पावन जानकी जीवन सीता मोहन राम हे अयोध्यवासी राम 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 दशरथ नंदन राम हे अयोध्यवासी राम 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 दशरथ नंदन राम पतित पावन जानकी जीवन सीता मोहन राम पतित पावन जानकी जीवन सीता मोहन राम हे अयोध्यवासी राम 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 दशरथ नंदन राम पतित पावन जानकी जीवन सीता मोहन राम हे अयोध्यवासी राम 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 दशरथ नंदन राम पतित पावन जानकी जीवन सीता मोहन राम अयोध्यवासी राम 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 दशरथ नंदन राम अयोध्यवासी राम 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 दशरथ नंदन राम।
On that very divine note, today is going to be all about Ramanubhav. We have all our students of Pravina Guru who have put together a little event for us, and I would request Kiran to start off with the proceedings.
Sri Rama Rama Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tatulyam Rama Nama Varanane.
Shri Rama Rama Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tatulyam Rama Nama Varanane.
Shri Rama Rama Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tatulyam Rama Nama Varanane.
Thank you to Raj, Raji, and Lakshmi for the rendition. It's a beautiful one. Before we get further into the day's proceeding, there's so many questions which come up in our mind about Ramayana. And why did we choose Ramayana for this month? Is the first question that comes up into all our minds. It's a very special month of Karkatam, and I request Sujata and Swamiji to tell us what it's all about.
Namaste, Swamiji.
Namaste Sujata Bhagini, how are you?
I'm doing well. I was speaking to Nishant Mahodaya that other day, and he was talking about this Ramayana month. Do you know anything about it, Swamiji?
Of course, I grew up in Kerala, so I knew a little bit about Ramayana Masam or Ramayana Masa. But I was talking to Nishant Mahodaya about this too, and I did learn a lot more than I already knew. So Ramayana Masam is celebrated in Kerala during the Karkataka Masam. Karkataka month usually starts around middle of July and goes through middle of August. This year, it started July 17th and ends on August 16th. It coincides in Tamil Nadu with Adi Masam. And so during this month, it's usually in Kerala, they celebrate Ramayana Masa.
So what is so special about this month and this period of celebration?
So this month, the Karkataka Masam is in the middle of the rainy season in Kerala. And this month in particular, it's very, very heavy rainfall in Kerala. And people don't have much work outside. And they have gone for a long period without any harvest or food grain. The following month is Chingam Masam, which is when the harvest happens. So it's also called the Panjamasam or the scarce month. All resources are scarce, and there isn't much work outside. People who are in farming or fisheries or whatever, they can't go out and work. So they find solace from reading the Ramayana. So the way it works is they usually start reading Ramayana from the first day of the month and read it through the end of the month.
Okay, so this is basically they celebrate this to have solace, and these are the things which they do during this month. Anything particular, anything else they do during this month?
Of course, like I mentioned, they start reading Ramayana on the first day of the month. So you go to the temple and you perform a puja and you come back and start reading from the first chapter. Once you start reading, you're supposed to read every day. And during that period, some people, feed the poor, they observe fast, and they lead a vegetarian lifestyle. And when you read the Ramayana, you have to read it every day. you start with the birth of Rama and end with the coronation of Rama. You don't read the Uttarakanda. And every day when you read, you stop, and they time it in such a way that the first line is right on the first day and the last line is right on the last day. And you stop in like auspicious parts of the Ramayana. So for example, if there's a war or, somebody has just died, you don't stop there. You stop in like an auspicious part of the Ramayana, pick it up and continue it from the next day, and then end it with the coronation of Rama.
And do they visit any temples or any pilgrimage for them?
Yeah, great question. Actually, Kerala has temples for all the four brothers, Rama, Lakshmana, Bharata, and Shatrughna. And that some people undertake a pilgrimage to visit all these four temples, and it's called Nalambala Darshanam, meaning four temple, pilgrimage. So they undertake that pilgrimage during this holy Ramayana Masam as well.
And do they exemplify any kind of righteous behavior during this month?
Yes, you're not supposed to get angry. You're supposed to control all your negative, feelings. And I already mentioned, that you feed. Some people do engage in, mass feeding. There is also the Amavasa in the month of Karkadagam. It's called the Karkadaga Vavu in Kerala. So a lot of people perform rites for all the, ancestors who have passed away. That's and that occurs this year. I think it occurred on August 8th. So it happens in the middle of that period. So Karkadaga Vavu is also a very important function during this month that is celebrated in Kerala.
Actually, this should be celebrated throughout the year. As Mahatma Gandhi said that, the whole of India should have Ram Rajya.
Absolutely. And, it's who else to look up to than Sri Ramachandra Murthy as an ideal. Yeah.
Thank you. Dhanyavad, Swamiji.
Dhanyavad.
Isn't that wonderful? I did not know that there was a temple for all the four brothers. I mean, that is really new information for me. And about the Karkadaga month, I really did not know about it. I wonder how many of us knew about it. We will come to that in the Q&A later. Can we now just go ahead with the morning? Because we've got lots of questions to be answered. So I would request Asha and Pravina Guru to answer the next question about Ramayana.
Namaste, Pravina Bhagini.
Namaste, Asha Bhagini.
So today I'm going to ask you a question that has been bothering me for quite some time, as many of my questions to you, are. So I want to know, Ramayana is an integral part of our Bharata culture and tradition. We know that it is one of the most revered epics of our country, and there have been discourses, and discourses continue to be told about the Ramayana, on Ramayana, and discussions take place. But for me, sometimes I am bothered by this very fundamental question. Did Ramayana really happen, or is it just a work of fiction which has been handed down to us through the generations? Could you please answer my question?
Okay. So, Namaste, Asha Bhagini. Thank you so much for bringing this up, because I think this is a fundamental question on which, so many other things actually need to be explained. So, because if at a basic level, is it true or not is a question, then, how much ever we fill on top of it is not going to really be useful. So thanks for bringing this up. So let's just understand a few basic things. One is, what is Ramayana called? Okay. When we look at Sanskrita literature, it can go into really specific details. For example, in English, we have fiction and non-fiction. Is that right? But even in non-fiction, a lot of thoughts of a person actually goes inside, because we have management books which are non-fictions, but that again is a person's thought process. It's not like, this is the only way to do it. That's not what they say. But we also have biographies. We have autobiographies, we have biographies, we have so many different categories, right? In Sanskrita literature, they are very careful about the naming convention. So we do have some which are called as katha. Katha means stories. So stories can be anything, it can be a fiction, it can be real life documentation, it can be everything. So whenever a poet's imagination is involved, a lot of kavyams come up. You would have heard of this kavis, kavyams, like Kalidasa's kavyam is there, and so many other things are there, right? So all these kavi means they are, really knowledgeable poets, scholars. So they compose based on their imagination. So that has a huge, importance in our literary world. And those kavyas are revered for the beautiful poetry, the composition, the imagination, which are absolutely fantastic. There are some Puranas. Puranas basically is where our ancient scripture is documented based on the recipient. Suppose I am telling you something, okay? The way I explain it to you will be very different. Suppose I tell the same story to a child who is like 6 or 7 years old. The way, of course, you are a storyteller, you will know about it, right? The way we customize and tell the story will be completely different, isn't that right? So depending on the recipient, the way the narration goes would have changed in Puranas. That's why some people say, it's mentioned like this here, it's mentioned very differently in a different place. For example, in one place, the mother would have fed the child showing the moon is there, or saying that the snake eats the moon, and that is why the eclipse happens. All those are there. But on the other side, when a rishi is communicating it to another person who has intellectual maturity to observe it, the concept of eclipse would have been explained in no uncertain terms. So depending on the recipient, the way the communication happens would have changed. So these are documented in Puranas, which are called as Pura Apinavam, which means these are ancient treasures, Pura. Apinavam means it's really applicable even today. So you will see a lot of, metaphors equating a lot of things. You will see that there are underlying meanings to a lot of, statements that's mentioned. So that beauty is actually brought out in Puranas. Okay. And this can be a retelling or, retelling by a third person, fourth person, fifth person, retelling of a retelling. So those kind of layers will also happen in many Puranas when you see. Okay. Now let's come back to Ramayana. Ramayana is called as Itihasa. So Iti means thus. Ha-asa means exactly the way. So Itihasa means this is exactly the way it happened. So a loosely translated word could be that it is a biography. So this is just a documentation of what has happened. That is why when you read some of these concepts, right, it'll be like, oh my God, why are they going into so much of details? So many generations of the kings would have been mentioned. I'm here to read Rama's story. Why is so much of details given? And in fact, I was discussing with Neena ji, we will be seeing that in the upcoming thing. Like, the beautiful narration to the detail about Ayodhya is there. Everything, they go into so much of detail about explanation. If it is just about, making the story interesting, they could have just, summarized everything in a very exciting manner, like the way today's movies happen, right? Everything is a thriller. Everything is because the person should feel it interesting. But that's not the way this happens. So many positive traits of Ravana is mentioned, and so many negative traits of the some of the virtuous people are also mentioned. Why? Because it is just documentation as it is. So that is why it is Itihasa.
Okay. So along the same lines, my next question to you is this. Many of the incidents that have happened in the Ramayana, how relevant are they to today's world, and what are the lessons we can learn from these incidents? Can you just give one or two examples?
Oh, wow. Okay. In fact, there is one beautiful sloka in Ramayana. It's one of my favorite slokas, actually, which says, um, everything, all the dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, there are only 4 things that humans can look forward to, right? So it can be, what's exactly the righteous path? What I'm doing, is it right? Am I going in the right direction? Artha means, wealth. Everything today is about acquiring wealth. Karma is satisfying the desires. I want this, I want that, can I get everything that I want? And ultimately, the spiritual realization or the moksha, getting rid of this repeated cycles of births and deaths. So that is the ultimate objective. Now, Valmiki Maharishi in Balakanta itself mentions that, all these will be explained in Ramayana. In the 5th chapter, he explains that the entire Ramayana will be explaining these concepts, and different characters exhibit the different roles. It's all narrated as beautiful stories, multiple stories, sub-stories are also there in Ramayana, where all these are made explicit. So in Ramayana, it's not just about Rama, from whom we learn so many things, right? So we learn from so many different characters, because our role in life can be in any of these characters. So depending on the character we choose, we could directly draw parallels to Ramayana. Thereby we can start abiding by the qualities. So in fact, in one of the Alvar Pasuram, he says, Karpari Ramabiranayallar Matrum Karparo, which means that if we want to learn, where else can we look at? Only Rama is there. We have to learn our things from Rama. So I just want to add one point to your previous question also, as we are talking. Did Ramayana happen was your question. And I, of course, gave you Itihasa because of the structure of the word. But everything can be looked at from, a multidimensional approach. That's what I basically believe in. So today, if you go read the Ramayana, one is the detailing there. The second is the name of the places that is mentioned in Ramayana. And many places still retain the same name. So when you go by the location and the name, surprising things are, actually revealed that, the name is still there. The location is still there. So you know where exactly what event happened, and the map is perfect. So when you put Rama's journey, it beautifully comes along the path that Rama would have traveled, including the Rameshwaram, how he crossed the Ramasetu. Of course, NASA's images of, the bridge is explicit now. So that happened. And how the Ayodhya was located, everything comes there. Now, yet another dimension, a lot of scientists today have been exploring astronomically the events that's happened in Ramayana. Depending on the nakshatra, the star, the details mentioned in Valmiki Ramayana, Valmiki Maharishi has been very explicit. The nakshatra of Rama, when he was born, what happened, when was there Paurnami, when was there an Amavasya, that kind of details are also mentioned. And whenever there are important events like war, the astronomical position of the different nakshatras, everything has been captured in Valmiki Ramayana. I heard there are around 500 different mentions of such things. So there have been a lot of astronomers who calculated the time zone, try to map it with the astronomical events. They try to date the Ramayana. And it's not just by one person, multiple scientists have been working on that, which goes to prove, irrespective of the date they arrive at, it goes to prove that all these events could be mapped. So there's absolutely no question of whether it happened or not. So geography, astronomy, the naming itself, the location of all these names, everything comes to prove that all these are Satya Vakya of Valmiki.
Namaste.
That's wonderful, wonderful explanation. And for all the people who have joined a little later, we are apart. They are doing the yesterday is equal to tomorrow as part of a Gyananidhi series. I'm sure, Asha, I think you're satisfied with some of the answers, but yes, at the end of the session, you can ask some more. Now, can we have Sushi Natraj and Renu coming in as Valmiki and Brahma? Then they can throw some more light on what the first shloka was. Good morning. Namaste. Today, as a part of our Jnananidhi series, this month we present to you Ramanubhavam. When we talk about Ramanubhavam, the story of Rama, we follow Valmiki Ramayanam because we feel it is the most authentic, because Rama and Valmiki lived around the same time. So all the facts and all the stories that have been chronicled by sage Valmiki was definitely authentic. So what we do not call Ramayana as an epic, we call it as Itihasa. What does Itihasa mean? Itihasa mean so indeed it was. Coming back to Valmiki Ramayana, how did it all start? The story is very, very interesting. It is also, we talk about the first shloka before Ramayanam came into existence. There was a conversation that was happening between Devarishi Narada and Valmiki. Devarishi Narada wanted Valmiki to write because he would have seen the wisdom in him. So, Sage Valmiki asked Narada, tell me about one person who is living in our times who has all the 16 qualities, all in one person. All the 16 good qualities. Is there any person like that? I would like to write about it. Immediately, Devarishi Narada said, of course there is one person, and that man is Sri Rama. He left it at that, but the thought was in Sage Valmiki's mind. A few days later, Sage Valmiki went out of the ashram along with his Bharadwaj sage, and when they were walking, they came to a nice lakeside, a beautiful lakeside. You know, there was all greenery around and it was a very pretty place. And along the lake, he saw a very beautiful sight. He saw two crouch pakshis. The pakshis are almost like swans. And both of them were in love. It was a beautiful sight. And, Sage Valmiki just kept looking at them, and then he was admiring them, and he was feeling very happy to see the intimacy between both the birds. Suddenly, out of the blue, this whole scene of happiness was shattered. Out of nowhere, a hunter, he struck his arrow, and in a few minutes, one of the crouch pakshis lay dead. It was a male one that left its life, and the agony that the female bird went through was unbearable for Sage Valmiki to see. He was so upset seeing the sight that he immediately, whatever words came to his out of his mouth, he just said it. He said it in all anger and agony because he could not see this very unhappy sight. That shloka became the first shloka. And the shloka is
Ma nishad pratishtham tvam agamah shashwati samaha yat krauncha mithunadekam avadhi kama mohitam. Ma nishad pratishtham tvam agamah shashwati samaha yat krauncha mithunadekam avadhi kama mohitam.
श्लोक एवा त्वयं बद्धो न अत्र कार्या विचारणा मछन्दा देवते ब्रह्मन् प्रवृत्तेयं सरस्वती रामस्य चरितं कृत्स्नं कुरु त्वं ऋषि सत्तम धर्मात्मनो भगवतो लोके रामस्य धीमतः वृत्तं कथय धीरस्य यथा ते नारदाच श्रुतम् यावत् स्थास्यन्ति गिरयः सरितस्य महीतले तावद् रामायण कथा लोकेषु प्रचरिष्यति.
Sage Valmiki was astonished at himself and the way that he has uttered the words. The words which came out in actually anger and anguish have actually taken a very poetic form. He was wondering how am I able to say these words even though they came out of such anger. And the Shapa actually meant, you cruel hunter, you have killed one of the birds. They were so much in love and you have killed one of them. So you are never going to live in peace for your entire life. That was the Shapa that he gave the hunter. Soon after that, Sage Valmiki went back to his ashram and but these words and everything that has gone through he kept pondering over it. Very soon the creator himself, Brahma, came down to earth, and then after Sage Valmiki gave him his due respect, after his hospitality was given to the Almighty, soon after that, Brahma himself said, Sage Valmiki, you are the best person to write the Ramayana. And he said, Goddess Saraswati is going to bless you with all the words that are possible, and then you are going to be writing the best story of all times. That is how Ramayana was born. Sage Valmiki went on to write 24,000 shlokas after that. So this shloka was just the beginning. Thank you to Renu and to Sushi Bhagini for enacting the shloka for us. So that, people, is what it was, the first shloka of the Ramayana. We go on to so many more questions. Today's session is about Ramanubhavam, revelations from the Ramayana. Can we have the next segment, Kiran?
Namaste, Pravina ji.
Namaste.
Okay, I have a very small question. Actually, going through both the Itihasas, which we have, Mahabharata and Ramayana, I found that Vyasa, actually it is my understanding that Vyasa was a part of Mahabharata as Krishna Dvaipayana. So he was a character in the Mahabharata, and then he goes on to tell about Mahabharata because he knows everybody else in that epic. However, when I look at Valmiki Ramayana, Valmiki was not a person directly involved in it, to my understanding. My understanding was that he comes after Rama leaves Sita and all, and that too is a contentious because Uttara Ramayana might have been added or something like that. So Valmiki was not a part. So Vyasa could know Mahabharata firsthand, while Valmiki had no idea how all these things unfolded. So how did Valmiki know about this, especially the description of Ayodhya and such things? He goes about in a very nice manner. So how did he know about it? Who told him about all these Rama stories?
Okay. It's a rather interesting question because we'll have to connect a lot of things to understand this concept. So it's a beautiful question, I would say. So now just think about it. We have called both Ramayana and Mahabharata as Itihasas. In fact, you rightly used it as Itihasa. So the moment we say Itihasa, Iti, Ha, Asam, this is exactly the way it happened. That is the concept. And now the moment we call it Itihasa, what happens is the person should have lived at the same time as the character in the Itihasa, because it is like a biography of a person that is written. Now, Sage Valmiki wrote the biography of Rama because they were Samakalinaha. They lived at the same time. Both Valmiki Maharishi and Bhagavan Rama lived at the same time. So it is a documentation of what exactly happened. So that is why it is called as Itihasa. In fact, it's the same case with Vedavyasa also. Vedavyasa Maharishi documented all what happened because it happened while he was there. And that is why that is called as the Itihasa. So the rule here is when something happens, when they are living and they document it, then only it can be called as Itihasa. And these have to happen as it is. Only then these are facts which can be compiled together. That is why it is Itihasa. So there is a very, very high probability that
sage Valmiki Maharishi would have actually seen the entire Ayodhya to document it then and there. And is there any proof that, sage Valmiki was a Samakalinaha? Yes, there is a mention in the Ayodhya Kanda. In fact, there are 2 slokas mentioned in Ayodhya Kanda. After the construction of Chitrakuta, in the 56th chapter, it mentions that in sloka 16 and 17, where it says that Sita, Rama and Lakshmana did visit sage Valmiki ashram, and then they offer their salutations to sage Valmiki. And it also, praises sage Valmiki because he knew, the right things and he was such a great saint and all that. And he, welcomed them and he requested them to sit. And this was part of their journey to visit many such sages. So that is also mentioned in the Ayodhya Kanda. Now coming to the second part of your question, you asked, so how do I understand that, these were actually revealed to him? Because how did sage Valmiki come to know? Okay, description of Ayodhya is at least okay, right? He had written so many things in Ramayana. How did he know of such things? Is that right? So let's just think about that.
Okay, just a minute. I want to interview here. Actually, what I meant to ask was, like in Mahabharata and all, there is Sanjaya saying things right from the war field. He is having a commentary. So these things could have been recorded, right? But in Valmiki, of course, heard it from Samakalina, everything I can agree. But if you see the Ramayana Yuddha and all, each thing was so elaborately explained. So how did he know all those things? Who was explaining to him? Because in Mahabharata, again, when the story of writing, Brahma tells him, you were there, so you could, and he could understand everything, and he needed somebody to put it into words. Vedavyasa needed somebody to put it, and Ganeshji was writing it according to one thing. In Ramayana, nothing of that sort is there. Nobody has a commentary or something like that, but Valmiki wrote it just as fine. So that is what I was asking, how did he know?
Okay. So actually, just as how Brahmaji was helping there, even in the very first Balakanta, it is mentioned that Brahma actually appeared in front of Valmiki Maharishi. And there are some beautiful slokas where Brahma actually blesses Valmiki Maharishi. If you just have a look at these 2 slokas, it is really amazing to see that, Brahma actually blesses sage Valmiki. And what does he say in the very first Balakanta? He says that you would get to know everything that is required. You would know about the great Rama, Lakshmana, Sita, everything, even about the Rakshasas, their thoughts, even those things which others will not know, you will actually come to know. So this is the blessing of Brahma himself. And then he says that whatever you utter there will happen to be the truth. So if it is a truth and he utters, that's fine. But if he utters something, that will definitely happen that way also. So even that is taken care of.
Right? That is called Aptobadesham.
Yeah, Apta. So Apta Vachanam, Bhagavan will live by the Apta Vachanam. Even in the Mahabharata, you see that, Bhishmacharya said that I will ensure that Krishna uses his weapon. Okay. So Krishna did not want to use his weapon. But then, because Bhishma said, Krishna ended up using a weapon in spite of having the oath that he will not use it. So these kind of things to happen. So because Valmiki said, those would have happened as well. So this is a divine dimension that Bhagavan Brahma came and blessed Valmiki. But I know you being Nishanji, you would also want other, angles to this question. So I would think of it in multiple dimensions. Okay. Now think of it in a very, very practical way and just go back 3 generations. Okay. So you, your father, your grandfather, and now move yourself to a timeline prior to your grandfather. And now think of some cricket match happening in a different part of the globe. Okay. So a cricket match is happening there. People might get to know of the results, after a long while after a match happens and all that at that point of time. And today in this technology, we can see everything live. Suppose you had documented this particular thing, okay? And imagine your grandfather reading it. I know that's not possible, your great-grandfather, suppose he has access to this text, okay? How can they see the same thing live? How is it possible? I just can't comprehend all these things can ever happen. Because today we are in a different technology as to what was there during your great-grandfather's time. But what mistake we usually do is we think technological advancement is the only possibility and deterioration is not a possibility. What if there was some kind of technology during that period which we are not aware of now? That is a possibility. So maybe Bhagavan Brahma, offered something to Sage Valmiki, because of which, he could get everything at the click of a button, possible. Okay, so he came to know of everything irrespective of what was happening. Something like a television that we have today, just as how Sanjaya was blessed with divine vision, he was blessed. Now let me give you another dimension. Okay, so let me give you another dimension. Today, suppose our intelligence is there, okay? So the army intelligence is there. So they have people everywhere. You don't even know who is where, but so many information gets recorded. Similarly with journalism, so many information gets recorded. As far as the information goes, they will not even know how they got the information. Even then the defense gets all the information across the globe. How do they do it? How do they manage it? How do the journalists get the information? How do they manage it? Do they have some CCTV cameras in the enemy camp? We never know. But they get the appropriate information even beforehand. Even before incidents could occur, they seem to have the information. So if that is possible today, with all the divinity that Maharishi Valmiki had, he could definitely write everything that was required as part of Ramayana as concerned. Isn't that right?
True. I can get your point, because it's almost H.G. Wells sort of thing, time machine sort of things, dimensions of time travel. A lot of things could have been possible. Yes, that indeed is a possibility. I agree to that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And because we are discussing about Balakanta now, the final point that I want to conclude with is that even in Balakanta, Lava and Kusha are mentioned as disciples of Sage Valmiki. Typically when children of the kings are there, they will be sent to Gurukulam in order to learn. So Lava and Kusha actually learned from Sage Valmiki being in his Gurukulam, and Sage Valmiki taught all this Ramayana to be recited as songs to Lava and Kusha, and this is documented in the Balakanta of Ramayana itself by Sage Valmiki.
So is anywhere mentioned that Lava and Kusha were Rama's sons in Balakanta?
It is mentioned as they were princes. Prince is mentioned. So it is up to our judgment. So connecting the dots, we definitely get a different picture. So the idea here is that they were definitely students. So Valmiki Maharishi and Rama lived around the same time. Valmiki Maharishi tutored his children. So all this gives us clarity.
True.
Thank you so much for bringing
Namaskar.
this wonderful question, Nishanji. I think this would have given clarity to a lot of people as well. Dhanyavadaha. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was a wonderful explanation again, Guru. And to everyone who has just joined, this is our Yesterday is Equal to Tomorrow series as part of a Gyananidhi. And the two people are in conversation with Pravina Guru and Dr. Nishant. Dr. Nishant is actually an Ayurvedic doctor, and he's the one who lives in Kerala. In fact, he's the one who actually came up with the concept of the Karkata Masam, because when he was talking about it, that is what has actually inspired us to do the Ramanubhavam this month. So thank you so much, Nishanti, for it. And Guru, like you said, Doordarshanam is TV, right? And Dooravani is radio, isn't it? So, I mean, these are the words which have derived from, again, our Sanskrit. So coming back to our further proceedings, we have so many questions to be answered. And I think the next one is from me, Guru. Please answer my question. Namaste, Guru Pravina.
Namaste, Neena Bhagini.
Wonderful that today when we are talking about Ramayana and then we are talking about the scriptures, about the Upanishads, we also come to know about cavemen, and it's very confusing, I mean, what was India made about then? Can we have some light on that, Guru?
That's a very interesting question. In fact, a lot of confusion does arise because on the one side, we have said that, we were all cavemen, we did not know what was happening and all that. So let me just go through a few things that is mentioned by sage Valmiki, because today we are discussing about the Balakanta of Srimad Valmiki Ramayana. He has laid down a few interesting things. So I will just explain that, and then we will leave the decision to, you and others who want to understand whatever he's mentioned.
Yes.
So the first thing he explained is about the beautiful river Sarayu and the prosperous country which is called as Koshala. And he says that was a place with abundant food grains, wealth, and it was inhabited with people who were completely contented. And he says the capital of that city was Ayodhya. So his explanation is now on Ayodhya city. Then he says that the size of the Ayodhya city was 8 to 10 miles. Okay. Now, 8 to 10 miles in the sense, he speaks in terms of yojana. Okay. The earlier measure that we were having was actually called as yojana. So one yojana typically used to be 8 to 10 miles. And the measurement that Valmiki Maharishi says is that Ayodhya was 12 yojanas length and 3 yojanas in breadth. Now, what has happened is when we were invaded, the British revenue measurement had actually mentioned the yojana scale to be just 5 miles, just reducing it to 50% of what it was. So most of the dictionaries, if we refer today, will show yojana as 5 miles, but the earlier measurement was typically 8 to 10 miles. In many places, I've seen it as 9.6 miles per is 1 yojana and things like that. Okay, going ahead. And then Valmiki Maharishi speaks about the Rajamarga. Rajamarga is the streets of the Rajamarga. And that's the highway kind of a thing, if we can equate it to the royal highways, He says that the beautiful trees were seen on either side of the highways, and the trees were watered regularly, they were flowering beautifully, and the city had beautiful gates, basically saying that, this place was a different location, and outside the city was something different, something like the business district today, or when we enter the IT zone today, something like that. So the gating was happening there, or the zoning, urban zoning possibly. So you had to get into that city. And he's also explained that the palaces were constructed in rows, so it is all, you can just visualize how it would have been. The palaces were there, the trees were there, everything was flowering, properly watered at every point of time. And the gateways, the arcs, the entries, everything has been very well said. And what's really more interesting is this step, Neena Bhagini, where he says that it had all kinds of machinery. So is he talking about some kind of advanced technology here? Because he says that, the latest machinery were all there. So I was thinking, I'm now based in Singapore, and we are speaking about smart cities which are coming up, which is all technologically enabled. Was Valmiki Maharishi speaking of some kind of advanced technology that was there in, Ayodhya? So, and he goes on to say that it's not just about people being contented and the machinery that's available. He says that the weaponry and craftsmen was, absolutely fantastic there. In fact, he's used some beautiful words there. Shatabni, Satashankulam. Basically, Shatabni would mean missiles. So the very word Ayodhya means Yodhum Asatya. So you can never have a war with Ayodhya. That was the kind of city Ayodhya was. It was very well protected. So here he says Shatabni means it had all possible missiles to protect the place, which means missiles. He's not even speaking about, weapons. He's speaking about missiles.
Astonishing, Guru, astonishing. Now I can actually picturize that it was a very beautiful city with very well laid out streets, with beautiful trees on either side. And of course, you had the river Sarayu, which was watering all this, I'm sure, and the flowering plants and the fruits. So beautiful. No wonder it was referred to as an ideal city. Even today, when people say an ideal state, they always say Ramarajya. I mean, that's how you refer to it, where peace and prosperity was there, even though it was a very advanced state. So I think we were much ahead of everyone's times, I'm sure. And of course,
Exactly. In fact, Valmiki Maharishi says there was no city on earth superior to Ayodhya.
beautiful, beautiful. And we can actually visualize it now with the description that has been given by Sage Valmiki. And of course, Rama, the king, was the epitome of dharma, righteousness, satya, truth. And they all say, right, Guru, Yatha Raja, Tatha Praja.
Praja, exactly. You nailed it. So, in fact, in this context, right, there are 2 or 3 other things which is really amazing. You know, the way Valmiki Maharishi is put. He says that the Sarva Yantra Yudhavatim. So, basically, he speaks of weapons initially. He speaks about the safety of people, and he says all possible instruments were there. Sarva Shilpi Bihi. So, all possible, artisans were there. And everything which a suburb needs. And he speaks about women there. He says that, the theater artist, women's safety, and the kind of gardens it was surrounded with, and the music was there in the air. He speaks about all possible instruments that were surrounding the place, and how there was always surplus of food. And it was all surrounded by elephants, horses, cattle, camels. He basically explains everything. And one word is where I was really awestruck. It was like, he explains the kind of buildings that was there. And he has said that Kotagarescha Sampurnami, which means that there were houses which were closely, utilized, basically saying that the houses or the dwellings, he did not waste any space in construction, and that it looked like spacecrafts, and there were 7-story buildings.
Wow.
Skyscraper that we are mentioning now.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And he's compared it to Amaravati, or the abode of Indra himself. And he says that was the kind of structure. And even these houses had beautiful, ornamental stones studded on it. So think about, decorating the house with precious stones. So that is the kind of thing he's given. And Ikshukanda, like the sugar cane, the water tasted as if it was sugarcane juice. So zero pollution. And
oh my God, what detail that Valmiki has gone into, even the taste he has mentioned. Amazing, Guru, amazing.
Exactly. So if you go to the 5th chapter of the Balakanda in Valmiki Ramayana, he speaks about the wide roads, the beautiful buildings, the trees that occupied either side of the roads, the concept of zoning that was there, possibly the safety of women, the kind of entertainment that they had, the purity of water, and the happiness that was there in the air around, and the multi-story buildings and smart city concept. So, well, was all this the imagination of Valmiki? I don't know. Can somebody imagine things to this extent, to this detail, So, in my opinion, it is all documentation of what was actually existing.
Actually.
And that is why it is Itihasa, right?
Itihasa. Thank you, Guru.
Thank you for posing this question, Neenaji. Dhanyavadaha.
My God, I think there's so much that we have learned, the intricate details of how Valmiki's writing was. We're going to have one more question before we go on to the highlight of this morning. And I think Ahalya is waiting to show her appearance. But before that, we have Swamiji and Praveena asking the next question.
Namaste, Praveena Bhagini.
Namaste, Swami Mahodaya.
Okay, I have a question with regards to Balakanda. In Balakanda, Rama and Lakshmana are 2 young boys. And the great sage Vishwamitra requests Rama and Lakshmana to accompany him to the forest to protect him and the other sages from the demons during the yaga. Sage Vishwamitra himself is a trained warrior. He knows everything about arms and warfare. He is very well capable of defending himself and the yaga from the demons. why request two young children to go to the forest to fight the demons?
That's a wonderful question, because when we look at Valmiki Ramayana, Balakanda, the answers to this are already there. He's given us the answers for these questions. And the scenario is like this, okay? Initially, Valmiki Maharishi explains about the birth of the 4 children, Rama, Lakshmana, Bharata, Shatrughna, and the love and affection between Rama and Lakshmana. So he says that, Rama will not eat without Lakshmana, and Lakshmana will always be on service to Rama, everything. So actually, sage Vishwamitra is asking only for Rama. But then Lakshmana says, I'll go with him. He can't be without Rama. So, he accompanies Rama. So the request was only for Rama. Kaga Bhakshadaram Ramam, Jeshtam me Datum Arhasi. So please give me that, little boy with his beautiful curls, Rama, who's, filled with valor. So Vishwamitra says that he's so beautiful looking, but he is full of valor. So give him to me. And even there, it is mentioned that all the 4 children were now well-versed scholars in Vedas, and they were ready to protect the world. All their knowledge was only for one purpose, which is to protect the entire world. So that is also established prior to this. So these are the key points. Now, sage Vishwamitra had been a Rajarishi. He knew everything. In fact, he will now, going forward, he'll be blessing Rama and Lakshmana with very rare mantras, Bala Atibala mantra. And then he'll be giving them a lot of astras. Astras would mean like the missiles as of today, So he'll be blessing them with a lot of such knowledge. Now, was he not capable of protecting himself is the question, right? Now, the scenario goes like this. He enters the palace of Dashratha. Dashratha is, very happy to welcome the sage, because such purity is brought even when they all enter a particular place, is what our scriptures say. Now, Dashratha says that you are the very Bhagavan to me. So whatever you ask, don't even hesitate. I'll offer all what you want and things like that.
I understand. I mean, that's the king. As a king, I understand he's ecstatic that Vishwamitra is visiting the palace or the court, and he wants to offer him everything. But Vishwamitra could have asked for anything else. He could have asked for the army. He could have asked for more weapons. Why ask for the kids?
Exactly. So what happens is that, now when Vishwamitra comes and he says that, Dashratha says, I'll give you whatever you want. So now this Vak becomes very important. Now Vishwamitra says, I want your son. And Dashratha is not able to take it. He says that I will come, my entire Akshauhini army will come to protect you. What can these 2 little kids do? He says, my child is less than 16 years old. His eyes will actually close like a lotus, when the sun sets. He just can't be awake. He's such a small kid. So I will do all what you want. And Vishwamitra is angry because Vishwamitra knows what's going to happen. And he in fact warns Dashratha, saying that if you want to protect Dharma, you better give your son. Now, why was this required is a very, very interesting question. If you look at these slokas, I've also mentioned the sloka sankhya, or the number of the sloka from Srimad Valmiki Ramayanam. So he says that, give me your son. And he also says, if you look at the second sloka, that, there are these demons who have to be eradicated if everything has to go well. And the last sloka is also very interesting, where he says that if you want to protect the dharma for this world, then this act of yours is required. So on the whole, if you notice, they will be protected by me as well. So Vishwamitra Maharishi is capable of protecting the children who is expected to protect the entire yajna. So your question is very valid. In that case, why can't he do it by himself? Why should he, ask them to come? Now that is where this entire beauty is. Vishwamitra Maharishi, though he was a Kshatriya, he is now taken the Brahmana Dharma, where he has to do a lot of rituals, practice the austerities in order to transfer knowledge to the entire world and for the well-being of the world. In fact, in Sanskritam, there's one beautiful concept here. Vishwamitra, we say, right? According to grammar, it should only be Vishwamitra. but it's called as Vishwamitra, which would mean only this Maharishi. Nobody else can be called as Vishwamitra. If anybody wants to have a name, they can only have Vishwamitra. Now, this sage alone is called as Vishwamitra because he had such a broad mind, a huge heart, where this entire Vishwam was his friend. He was a friend of this entire world. Therefore, he's called as Vishwamitra. That's the beauty of his very name. So now he wants to do, a big favor to the entire world by transferring his knowledge to the Kshatriya princess. So when Dasharatha comes, it's not going to help him at all. He wants Rama to gain all this valor because for the future, the establishment of Dharma is required. And as a Rishi now, his duty was to transfer his knowledge to the Satpatram, the right person. Rama's duty was to protect such great saints because he is a Kshatriya. Kshatriya has to take care of the kingdom. I told you the earlier phrase also, Lokakshemam. They were ready to protect the world. So he wanted Rama and Lakshmana so that, it would be a mutual benefit. Everybody had their respective roles in the society at that time. Deviation was not encouraged. They had to do whatever they were, to the best possible ability. And these kind of, why can't I do it? I'm an expert. The question is not whether they were experts or not. The question is whose duty it was in order to protect the entire community, the entire world, basically.
Very nice, very nice. Dhanyawad.
Dhanyawadaha, Swaminathan Mahodaya.
Swamiji is actually, he lives in the States, and I think it's right now it's a different time for him. But he's always there for us and for Jnananidhi as a very good friend of Praveena Guru. Even I had misconceptions of Swami Vishwamitra as a very temperamental person, but these are new facts for me. So can we have Vishwamitra along with Rama and Lakshmana in Ahalya? Namaste. Today we are going to talk about Ahalya. We have heard different versions from different people when we listen to the Ramayana about who Ahalya was. A lot of people say it was like a stone, which had been cursed, and then as soon as Rama touched the stone with his feet, it became into a lady, and then the lady who had been cursed many years back has been redeemed. This is a story of one kind. But we believe in Valmiki Ramayana, and these are the facts. And today I would like to tell you about it. Sage Vishwamitra, at that point of time, he was one of the most pious saints, and everyone looked up to him, including Rama, Lakshmana, Bharata, and Shatrughna. At this particular point of the story, Vishwamitra was going from Siddhashram to Mithila. On the way, after a night's rest at a previous place, they were walking through this forest, and Rama suddenly looks at a very desolate looking ashram, and then he asks Vishwamitra, Sage, why is this ashram looking so abandoned? Why is it looking so desolate? What is the story behind this? Vishwamitra, he wants to tell Rama the whole story, the truth as it is. So he tells Rama and Lakshmana the story of Ahalya and Gautama. Sage Gautama and Ahalya were a very pious couple who lived in this particular ashram. One day when Gautama is away, Lord Indra, he played a trick on Ahalya. He comes down as disguised as Gautama, and then I think he's besotted by the beauty of this gorgeous looking person, Ahalya. What happens later is a very intimate relationship between Lord Indra and Ahalya. And Indra is leaving the ashram, and Gautama is entering, and then I think he sees Indira leaving in a hurry, and Gautama understands something has happened. So he curses Ahalya.
You will be living here for thousands of years without food, subsisting on air, lying in ashes and doing penance in this forest and ashram without any living being around. Only when the son of Dashratha, Rama, comes into this dreadful forest will you be cleansed of your sin.
So that is what happens to Ahalya. She has been cursed. No one can see her. She's in the form of ashes, and then she spends many, many years in penance, just praying. And when actually Rama enters the ashram, what does he see? He actually sees a very divine form of Ahalya. She is divine and she's shining because of all the years of penance that have gone into her. As soon as Rama sets foot into the ashram, Ahalya comes back to her most beautiful form, even more beautiful than what she was. That's because she has gone through repentance. She has paid with the penance of so many years, and as soon as Rama and Lakshmana see her, they come and offer, they fall at her feet, they touch her feet, and she blesses them. And then she herself is also redeemed because of the presence of Rama entering her ashram, and the curse has lived its life. It has gone away. And Gautama also enters the ashram at that time. Both Ahalya and Gautama both take very good care of sage Vishwamitra, Rama and Lakshmana and all of the people who are with them. They offer them something very nice to eat, and then they look after them. The best of hospitality is offered to them. And that is the redemption of Ahalya. I'm sure today's world does not look upon Ahalya as a woman who has, a fallen woman. I don't think she's being considered like that at all. She was someone who was redeemed for her one mistake. She paid the price by many, many millions of years of penance. And she has paid for it, and then she comes out even more divine. So I think this is how Ahalya is looked at today. Why do you think today a lot of people name their daughters and their granddaughters as Ahalya? Because she's considered divine. I hope everyone enjoyed seeing all our beautiful students of Guru Pravina in different acts. We had Rama and Lakshmana as Raji and Lakshmana as Lakshmi. And of course, the gorgeous Ahalya was Kavita. And we have Vishwamitra as Asha. And then we have Sujata Mundra as Gautama. So I hope all of you enjoyed watching the skit and the whole day's proceedings. And I think I've come to the end of my narration today. Thank you, Guru. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Namaste so much. So I'm sure all of you were engrossed in all what happened. We had so many beautiful people taking so much of efforts to bring out this skit. The earlier skit of the slokas, it was definitely not easy to recite the 2 slokas. So those 2 slokas, the skit of Ahalya, people are in different locations, and at this point bringing everybody together to give such a feel of our tradition is a marathon task, I would say, and I would thank each one of you who went through this process. And Neena ji, I would request you to share your experience of what it was to put these things together, please.
And today is going to be the whole truth and nothing but the truth, Guru. Yes, it was not easy. It was not easy because we are in lockdown times, and then we try to be as careful as possible even now. In fact, I must tell you that when we were doing the Q&A with you, Guru, you could see my Simba and my junior in the background. They are with me for every session of my budget, every session of Sanskritam, and every one of my, other classes. These are the lockdown days, but we are still unstoppable, isn't it? There's so much of learning, there's so much of introspection, so much of wisdom that we're gaining from all our classes and encounters with people like you. So we did not want to, compromise on anything. There are a whole lot of people I need to thank, and I would like to do it at this time. Starting with, I would like to thank Kiran from my EDP department of Savira, who has been fantastic. And he has been actually working back to back, because his role at our organization is much bigger than ever before, because everything is so digital and it's challenging. Apart from the regular work that he does, I give him this extra work. But I'm sure he says he's also learning on the job. And so thank you, Kiran, from all of us at Gyananidhi for your presence and for everything, for putting everything together.
Thank you so much, Kiran.
The next one is, of course, my co-director and my partner in crime, Sujata Mundra. She's there for, like I said, we are the unstoppable duo. You just give us a role and then we just go all out to do it. But we enjoy doing it. I think stress keeps us going, so, and it's all good stress for us. So thank you, Sujata, for always being there. Love you so much.
Thank you.
And of course, I would like to thank Kala for lending her voice to that budget, for bringing it alive. I think that set the right tone for it, because the budget was ringing in my mind when I was trying to put the whole thing together, so I think that was an inspiration for me. So thank you, Guru Kala, for it. And of course, we have, why did I choose Rama and Lakshmana? Why was it Raji and Lakshmi? I don't know. I think you all must agree that they all look great together, right? I mean, they really look like brothers. And of course, if you ask about the props and about the clothes, the props, I would like to thank Kumar. I hope he's also watching. He's my purchase manager at Savera. So I sent him to Natrak to pick up the costumes, at least the bow and arrow, because I think it's very much a part of it.
Oh, yeah.
Then Raji, but we had to see both of them together. There was only shot where we had to have both of them together. So they're walking in the corridors of Savera, and then they're placing Savera with their footsteps. So Rama and Lakshmana entered there. And finally, the attire, it is the uniform uniforms of the Malgudi staff. So,
Wow.
so I think it just fell into place. If you have some kind of an idea, and I think, like I say, the universe always conspires to bring things together. I've always believed in that. So it was just fun doing it. And in fact, when you see them live, they were looking so reverent, Guru Prabhu, Praveena. It was looking fabulous. In fact, Sujata and I were doing this to both of them all the time. So thank you for that. And coming back to Vishwamitra, I think he was having doubts whether he was looking like Santa Claus, because he had the white beard and all. He said, no, just go put a bindi and then you'll be fine. And of course, we had Vishwamitra there. And we had so many people dropping out at this time because they had other commitments. So, so we had Sujata Mundra stepping in as Gautama, and then she did a wonderful job there. And then she just had to take out all that from a puja room, and then she had to do the walk. She wore her husband's the kurta and his dhoti, and then we had Gautama ready for you. Coming back to the last but the most important character of Ahalya, Guru, I could not think of anyone else except Kavita Modi as the gorgeous woman, because she's the way she carries herself and her attire and her accessories, she is the epitome of beauty and grace. So, so thank you to all of them who have been a part of this, and of course to Renu and to Sushi, who really had to, voice that to really say the words. So they are the most confident people in our class, and they're the right people who can do the right pronunciation. So they are the chosen two for us. So thanking everyone who has been a part of this. Thank you very, very much. For me, it was a huge learning, and I'll do it for you anytime, Guru. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neena Bhagini. I mean, so much of effort has gone into bringing this out, and it's really come out well. Thank you so much, Neena ji, and each one of you for all the efforts that you've put in. And in the process, think about what's happening to us. We keep thinking about Ramayana, resonating with whatever is mentioned there, and what exactly Valmiki Maharishi has mentioned. Because in this anecdote of Ahalya, usually what we see in the serials or in the movies or wherever we see, it's like Rama came and stabbed on a stone, and then the stone became a lady. But in Valmiki Ramayana, the way she is mentioned is that Devarupini, Bhagyavati. So those kind of adjectives is like, she is an epitome of beauty who is mentioned as like, having the tejas like the sun god, and, she's shining because of her tapasya. And Rama fell at the feet of Ahalya to seek her blessings. So that is the greatness of Ahalya, the way it is projected in Ramayana, which, we get into our system, understanding the greatness of what is mentioned in our scriptures. And the first poetry of mankind was shown today to all of us. This poetry needs to be by-hearted by each one of us. Manishada pratishtam tvam agama shashwati sama, etkrauncha ripurarenam, mahati kama mohitam. That became the Mangala Sloka of Valmiki Ramayana, where it says that initially, though it was a curse, it later became a blessing, because it is about Ma, goddess Mahalakshmi, and Nishada, because it was Bhagavan Vishnu in whose heart Mahalakshmi resides. So it became a Mangala Sloka of Valmiki Ramayana, and all the 24,000 slokas were kept in the same meter, the Anushtup Chandas, which is a great thing for us to relish, enjoy the birth of poetry to humankind, if we could call it that way. The first ever poetry that we came to know was this sloka that was enacted here. Thank you, each one of you, for bringing out so many beautiful things. We are still in the Balakanta. We are just starting the Ramanubhava. Going forward, we want to bring in a lot of episodes connected to Ramayana across the different kandas and bring out what exactly is mentioned in Valmiki Ramayana. Thank you all so much. And we usually meet the second Saturday of every month, and the same timing typically. All of you who are not yet in our Jnananidhi group, I request all of you to just join our Jnananidhi group, and you can even send a chat message here in case you're not there. We can send you the contact coordinates. So we will keep you all posted as to what is coming up. So many knowledge sharing information is also happening in Jnananidhi. So please be part of that. I would like to conclude this entire program with this beautiful sloka on Ramayana, which is called as the Ekasloki Ramayana.
Before that, Guru,
Yeah.
1 minute. I forgot to thank one more person who is Raj, the one with the hat, right at the beginning. Raj is actually was a part of, he was the background. He was also guiding me because he makes many movies on his own. So I wanted his guidance also. So Raj, thank you for being there for us for the whole program. Thank you so much. Guru, it's on your.
In fact, I should thank every single person who's here today and every single person who asked me these questions. And if any of you have questions, please, join us in asking the questions. Your feedbacks are extremely important to us. And we will be having so many such sessions coming up in the future. So please put down your questions. We can have a question answer session with you as well, which could be, cast in the upcoming events. So with that, I will go to the last sloka to wrap up this. This Ekasloki Ramayana brings out a line on the different kandas of the Valmiki, of the Ramayana itself. So that reading this, people say, is like remembering the entire Ramayana. That is why it says that Ekasloki, in one sloka, we get the whole picture of Ramayana. And Karkata Masa is ending tomorrow. So we thought this is an appropriate time to bring out this episode of Ramayana where we dwell on Ramanubhava. So we think about Rama, we reflect on him, we contemplate on him, we immerse ourselves in his beauty, everything, right? So revelations of Ramayana is what we are attempting here. Adau Rama Tapovanaadigamanam Hatva Mrigam Kanchanam Vaidehi Haranam Jatayu Maranam Sugriva Sambhashanam Vali Niddaranam Samudratharanam Lanka Puri Dhahanam Paschadravana Kumbhakarnaharanam Etadhi Ramayanam Sampurnam. So that brings us to the conclusion of this beautiful Ramanubhavam, the dwelling in Ramanubhava, the second episode of Jnananidhi. We will keep having our Jnananidhis going forward. So thank you so much. We will stop the formal session here. If any of you have informal discussions, we can continue. All of you can share your feedbacks, responses, everything in our informal session. Dhanyavadaha.
Dhanyawada. Can we have a picture?
Yes. All that can start now. Yes. We were overshooting time, so I wanted this to be